Hi, welcome. We're excited that you're here this morning. This is great. We're in the class about subtext, which is so funny because it has the longest title. And I was like, that's kind of the opposite of subtext, isn't it? It's the art of not saying things. So we're super excited because we've got a great group of panelists here, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Rose at the end, then we'll just work our way this way.
Okay. My name is Rose Cartbox. I write sci-fi, fantasy, and love stories.
My name is Josie Russell. I also write under Josie Avari, and I write science fiction and cozy mysteries.
Oh, I guess that's me. I'm Matthew Buchholz. I am a writer, though I don't have anything published I can give you yet. I'm working on that part, as I'm sure many of us are. But I've written 2 full-length novels and in a 4-book series, and I also run a writing prompt group, a weekly writing prompt group. Do a lot of fun things there. I also do presentations for Apex quite regularly, so if you're a part of Apex, you can see my face there too and laugh all you like.
And I'm Amy Ziegler. I write sweet contemporary romance under my own name and YA fantasy under A.E. Ziegler. So we've got a great group of writers here, and the first question I want to ask is, why do we need subtext? Like, what is the purpose of subtext in writing, and why do we need it? Why is it so important? And I'll just let you free for all, unless you want me to call on you guys. Okay, Rose, you look like you have something to say.
Okay. I always do. For me, then I feel like subtext is kind of what makes or breaks a story for me. It's like one of the most key parts of crafting and writing. I think partly because like life is full of subtext. We're not constantly sharing our inner thoughts with everybody else, and we have to extrapolate what other people are feeling or thinking from the things they do, the facial expressions they have, etc.
Awesome. I think, subtext gives the depth. It's the depth under the still waters. And so, you have your surface story, and then you dive deep with the subtext.
Yeah, just to reiterate what they said, subtext makes your characters human. It's because, like I said, people don't say everything that they mean, and except for those people who do, and we all know those few people, and it's kind of uncomfortable to be around them sometimes. They just say everything that comes into their mind. And, maybe you want a character like that, but there's also a lot of subtext that can be handled, and it gives the audience something to do, to participate in the work as well. There's a famous saying, don't give the audience 4, give them 2 plus 2, right? Let them figure things out. And that's part of it. It's part of that emotional journey that the audience gets to be part of.
Also, it's a clever way to hide your theme, like the kinds of things that you wanted to talk about, but you don't want to say, this story is about how to overcome through courage. And you can use the art of not saying it and showing it instead of telling it. So I think that's really a great way to demonstrate theme. Okay, we know we need it, but how do we actually craft scenes, dialogue, all these things that we need in a good story? How do we actually go about crafting those things with subtext? Anybody want to start? Yeah, go, Josie, go.
I feel like I should say it really fast. So I think that one way to bring out subtext, especially in dialogue, is to use a little bit of contrast. So somebody's saying something that they don't necessarily mean, or they're saying it in a way that they don't necessarily mean it. So I think using some contrast in your dialogue, especially if you have an important emotional moment, we don't always say exactly what we need to say. And so working around what they need to say in dialogue is a very useful tool. And so having them to talk around something, I think it can be really fun as an author, and it can allow for space for the audience to fill in the subtext. And that's really a lot of what we're doing with subtext, is allowing space for the audience to become part of the story. And so I think that's one way in dialogue specifically that you can do that, is let them talk around something rather than just coming out and saying it.
Yeah, I hesitate to say much on this topic because it's actually a dangerous topic. I'm not even joking, because the interesting thing about subtext is that readers are intelligent enough to pick up on it, but also readers are biased. And so one thing I often warn my writer friends is that people can read between the lines, but they're more likely to project between the lines. And so while subtext is valuable, it's important, you also have to be really careful with it, because people can get the wrong ideas and can come up with their own ideas of what's going on between the characters. So it's a delicate balance you have to play. But another thing I would add, along with the dialogue thing, is body language. That's what I was going to say. Body language is also a very great way to add subtext to a story, because sometimes people are saying one thing and acting very differently. Or, I write some romance and I have one character who is in love with the main character, but knows that he has his, there's like a love triangle thing going on, and she's respectful of it. And so she's very careful about what she says, but she acts in such a way to show her interest and devotion to this person all the time.
That's great. Rose, she has something to add?
Yeah, the way I kind of see it is I try to create subtext using like the building blocks of a scene or whatever. So that would be, dialogue, inner thoughts, body language, like actual actions, and then also characters like reactions to their environment, even like their setting, that sort of thing. And what I try to do is give a little bit of what's happening through each of those building blocks, instead of relying really heavily on one or the other, and like kind of having a balance, but also a tension between those things.
Oh, I love that. Tension is always good in your scenes. One of the things that I try to do is try not to name emotions. Like if I see I am angry, then I'm like, oh, how can I show this? How can I demonstrate this? And it's okay to name, so I have this scene that I'm writing right now, and it's these two people, and they're I call it a fantasy road trip quest, and they're trying to, and it's a boy and a girl, so they're in love, and so they're frustrated with each other. But is that really the emotion that they're feeling? No, they're really attracted to each other, but she keeps saying, oh my gosh, she's so frustrating, right? But that's not the emotion that she's really feeling. She's in denial. So whenever I see that I've written, because, when I'm writing my first draft, it's she's angry and she stomped out the door, right? And I'm like, okay, I can go back in my revisions and I can make that better. I can make that more subtle. And so in my first draft, honestly, I'm not doing a lot of this subtext stuff. That's actually the second draft, where I'm like, okay, how can I make this a little bit more, where it is more intriguing and more interesting, where the characters are saying things, but they're not saying things, and hiding that a little bit better. So, how do we make sure, as I'm writing my scenes, I'm like, how do I make sure, what Matthew was saying, how do we make sure that the subtext is clear? Because, I don't know, who here took high school English and had to read books you didn't want to read? Okay? Yeah, that was me. I don't think I ever finished anything that I was told to read. And I remember we were reading Hills Like White Elephants, and they were like, what is this scene about? And I was like, what? Somebody reacted to that story?
I couldn't remember the title of it in my last class. I was like, what is it? Hills and elephants and white.
Hills Like White Elephants by, was it Ernest Hemingway? Thank you. And I was like, what is this about? I was in high school, so I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. And so I had to learn about subtext. So how do we make sure, and honestly, I don't think Hemingway was trying to read that or write that for high schoolers. So why were we reading it? I don't know. But I learned about subtext. So how do we make sure we hit our mark? That's the question I want you guys to answer.
jump on this one because I brought it up. And so there's no silver bullet solution, but I would say the most valuable tool to avoid the wrong ideas is beta readers, and lots of them. The more the better, because you will get the random beta readers like, I don't like this character because they think this and this and this, and this kind of person. I'm like, what book are you reading? Because it's not mine. I don't know where you got that idea from. Like, that is not that character at all. And so when I have 20 other readers who are like, oh, I love this character because this and this and this, I'm like, okay, you got it. So the one random person who didn't, that's okay, because everyone else seems to be getting it all right. But if it's the other way around, then you're in trouble. Then you're just getting the wrong ideas across.
Awesome. Rose?
I would say, I think it's okay not to be totally clear. I mean, it depends on what you're wanting to do with your writing. And I think one of the things I love about subtext is I feel like it can be something that kind of you peel away bit by bit through the story. And there may be things that you definitely want to be clear by the end of the story. But if you're fine with people reacting differently to some of your characters than what you intend, I think it's okay to leave it that way. I have a character in this book that my husband is adamant is evil, and I don't see her that way, but he's really, really sure that she is, and that's okay with me, because partly because this is only one in a series, and so her character will develop more. I had to be okay with the beta readers, some of them hating her, because, like, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? It's okay in the story that that's a reaction. And I think, I can't remember who said it, like, trusting your readers. Not everybody's gonna get the same thing from your story that you're wanting. You know, and if nobody gets it, then that's a big red flag, right? You as the writer also have to, like, you trust yourself. So, kind of expand, just, so I'm like gonna talk. But there's a literature critic, or was, I think it was in the 70s, who talked about readerly versus writerly stories. And readerly stories are ones that your reader kind of passively takes in. They can get through the story without having to put much effort in, and there's a place for that. And writerly stories are stories where your reader has to be actively engaged to be able to like take in your story. And I feel like subtext is one of the biggest aspects of that. And anyway, it's like you get to decide where you are on that scale, or where you want to be.
Yeah, I would just say a couple of things to that. First, along with your point, you know, subtext is emotional resonance. It is the echo of what the first sound you make. It's the echo of that within your reader, and it grows just like musical resonance. So that concept of resonance, I think, is really important when we're talking about subtext. Because of that, you don't have to control where your reader goes with things. Now, absolutely you want to get across what you're trying to get across, but I like what you said about, you know, the idea that they're going to take it in different ways. I have 24 published books, and I'm constantly surprised at the responses that readers, you know, they'll say, I love how you did this in this book. And I'll be like, yes, I did that. Sometimes it's a complete surprise to me because of their, you know, because they take the seeds that I have a lot of metaphors going on here, so sorry. And it grows into something that they help to nourish. And so I think that emotional resonance is a significant point that you have to think about when you do subtext, and you need to have that emotional resonance, but it's okay if it goes in a different direction. The other thing, just going back to the original question, how do we do this? I think it's really important that we understand the stakes in our novels, and that we understand that there are both public stakes, there are stakes that are in our plot. They're trying to do this so that they save the world, or so that they can, figure out this relationship or whatever. Those are sort of the public stakes. But there are also private stakes that each character needs to have, and you need to understand those stakes. You need to understand how things are affecting them inside, and how their internal plot is developing. When those mirror or contrast or match with each other, they could do either. They might be completely in opposition, the private stakes and the public stakes, or they might be in harmony. But either way, there's some great opportunity for subtext, and I think great stories do that really well.
Yeah, just to add another thing, which kind of matches what Rose was saying earlier. It's okay if your audience doesn't necessarily know what's going on. And sometimes that can actually be a tool. Sometimes you can use subtext as a tool for the twist at the end, where maybe you've been telling the audience this thing the whole time and it wasn't obvious until the end comes and they're like, oh my gosh, it was telegraphed the entire time and I missed it until this moment. Just as an example, I'm going to spoil a 20-year-old movie plus, 20-year plus movie. There's a moment in The Sixth Sense when the boy looks at the protagonist and says, I see dead people. They're everywhere. They don't even know they're dead, right? And the audience doesn't know at that moment, hopefully, if the director's done a good job, that he's talking about the main character. He's dead. He doesn't even know that he's dead, right? And so we don't know that until the very end of the movie. And it's like, oh my gosh, he just told us, straight up told us, but it was still subtext because we didn't understand the context at the moment.
Yeah, that's brilliant storytelling right there. And what I love about subtext is that it just adds like complexity to your characters, right? It's another, like you're trying to protect something deep inside, what it's at stake emotionally, and so you're trying to protect that, and so you might project something else than what you're protecting inside. And I just love it because we can also, we invite like what you were saying, we invite the audience to participate in speculation, right? You may have this ship that you have somewhere of two people that you're like, oh, I want to subtly put in a lot of subtext that they are eventually going to be a couple. I'm going to plant those seeds now, and then everyone's going to go to the boards and be like, I totally ship these guys, right? And that's how you invite reader speculation, reader participation into your work, and it actually brings that complexity and richness. So do you think, guys, that there is a difference of a amount or maybe between the genres, like how we use subtext in different genres? You mentioned that you write under 2 different genres, you write under 2 different genres, and you have some different genres. How many was that? And so do you think it varies between these things, and in what ways? Let's discuss that.
I think the differences are not necessarily huge, and it probably differs more from writer to writer. But I do think that kind of where you settle the subtext might shift a bit. So like if you're writing contemporary romance, then you're probably going to be having more of a conflict between inner dialogue, because it's often in like first person POV. So you have this insight into the person's inner dialogue, contrasting like how they're acting, what they're saying outwardly. But in other genres like horror or fantasy too, then there's probably going to be more subtext in setting and like kind of outward things happening. So
yeah, I think subtext is really the experience of being human, right? It is, our lives are full of subtext. We're all going along and then suddenly we realize this thing is really important. And, or we're going along and we realize that we're having internal dialogue about the things that are happening to us or the things that we're engaged in. And we're trying to make sense of that in the larger story of our lives. And so I don't think that there's a difference, I think, in the techniques that we use to reveal the subtext in different genres, but I don't think there's a difference in the subtext itself. I think it still has to do with that emotional resonance and how your character experiences the world of your story. You know, there's an old quote that says, you know, magic is the lifeblood of the universe, right? Well, I think subtext is the lifeblood of fiction. It's why we read fiction. It's significantly, it is the same fundamentally, I think, across genres. But our actual techniques may be different. So in a romance, you're going to reveal that subtext in a different way than you are, you know, in science fiction. In cozy mystery, subtext is a lot of fun to play with because you can expand on it in, you know, in your clues, in your suspects that come up. You can have these recurring hints towards your subtext throughout all of those things. But so the techniques may be different, but I think that essentially subtext is the lifeblood of fiction, and I think it has to be. Good fiction includes it no matter what.
Right, I'm going to be the contrarian here just a little bit, because I agree with everything you're saying, but just to maybe a different degree. I think there are genres in which the subtext, I think they all use subtext and use it. If they're memorable, they're going to be using subtext, I think. So I agree with the lifeblood thing. But there are genres, I think something like, you know, a military action book isn't going to have a lot of subtext in it. The subtext is probably mostly going to be around the theme, right? So the action, the people calling out, you know, orders and stuff like that, there's not going to be a lot of subtext in there, because you don't want subtext when you're commanding, you know, commandos in the field. You don't want to have them try and guessing what your orders are really supposed to be, right? And so it might be really straightforward in the dialogue and in the action and everything going on, but there will be still useful and meaningful subtext to the reader about themes, about what we're trying to accomplish and why we're trying to accomplish it and that kind of stuff. So just a little bit contrary.
I'm going to jump in here. And be a little bit contrarian, because I agree, I see where you're going with that. And I think that maybe what we need to do is maybe define subtext a little bit more. Because I do think that if you have military fiction without subtext, then you're on a cliff that is not gonna end well. Because we don't necessarily need to know the inner feelings of the commander, you know, but we do still need tension, and tension can be as much subtext as emotion, right? So we still need some kind of stakes, we still need some kind of tension. There has to be something going on besides just the shooting, not necessarily emotionally, but in the world there has to be some subtext. And so I think maybe we just need to define subtext differently per genre. Which I should have thought before, but I'm glad you said that, because it makes me think more about it, and I think genre may have different types of subtext as well as different techniques. So, but I still think you need it. Oh, yeah.
If genre, it depends. If that subtext depends on which genre you're writing in, then how can we, you know, use subtext if we have to know what our specific genre deals with?
I mean, a huge part of it is reading extensively in that genre so that you know, like, the writing tropes, not just the, like, story tropes, I guess. But also, I think, again, like, if I wrote military action, there'd be a ton of subtext. So I think it depends a lot on what kind of writer you want to be in general. You know what I mean? So you get to decide that, but yeah.
So just a little bit of clarification. It sounds like subtext is more of a category of tools rather than a tool itself, and that which tools we use depend on what exact genre and themes of the genre.
I would
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think you could, define it that way. So I wrote, I was invited to, are you guys familiar with Nick Webb's work? I was invited to write a novel in his universe with several other authors, and he was much more space action, space military, and that was a good exercise for me to work with my style in a different genre. And what I found, as you're saying, or as you're mentioning, is this just a group of tools. Yes and no. I think it is a group of techniques that we can learn. But I think also reading a lot will help you understand the tensions in your genre. Okay, and again, we go back to that. That may be the emotional resonance you're working with. So in a military sci-fi, you may have tensions between, commanders, between, and those of you who write a lot of this could give me better examples of the tensions. But then, in the same way, your two people in their car are going to have tensions. Throughout this series, the Cozy Mystery series, there are 18 books in that series, and throughout it, there are romantic tensions, and they are often echoed by, investigative tensions. And so think about your tensions. Think about what is the push and pull in your particular genre and in your particular story. That's kind of where you'll find your emotional resonance or your subtext.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. I wasn't pushing back against subtext at all. I think it's extremely valuable, and it's just to say that there are different types of subtext, and they will be used differently in different genres. And yeah, it's really just knowing your genre. And I hesitate to say what the audience expects, because I think you should write what you want to write, and I think you should write what makes you happy to write. And it's important to have these tools and know how to use them as you're writing, because that will improve your writing, which will improve the experience of the readers. But in my experience, if you're only just trying to match what's already been done, then it's already been done. So, it's okay to mix things up, to do it your way, and to not just follow the conventions all the time.
Well, I really like that, and I'll get to your question in just a second, but what subtext does is it introduces a mystery, because you're reading something and it's not at face value. And so all of a sudden you're like, is there something more to this scene? And any genre can have, is there something more to this scene, right? It can be, is there more to this relationship other than she's frustrated with him? Is there more to this tactical mission than what our commander is leading us to believe? There's so many ways that you can use subtext to show that something is not quite right, and to show conflict, inner conflict, other kind of conflict. Some people will just blurt how, well, I just don't like you. I know people like that. They have no filters. They just say it, whatever. But what you want is to add more complexity, is to add, is what is going on in this scene really what's going on, or is there more? And what that question in the reader's mind will keep them flipping pages. Okay, so it doesn't, to me, military sci-fi, you're just going to do it. It's not going to be about romantic relationships. I don't know, maybe add a romantic relationship in there and see what that does. That could be kind of fun, right? So you're just going to use this in different ways. Okay, actually, did you have something to say? And then we have a question, because I was going to say, do you want to open it up for questions after you talk?
I was just gonna say, I think I mentioned before, environmental subtext, and I just wanted to clarify, I guess, because I feel like that can be a very genre-specific thing. And I think the way you describe the environment is different in a mystery versus military action or romance, that sort of thing, and it really sets the mood. Whatever the point of view is, if you have third person omniscient or limited or whatever, you can do it in a way that you don't even have to deal with the actual character's emotions to make the reader feel what the characters might be feeling, or what they're, the space that they're in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. Thank you. Okay, we had a question over here, the girl in the sparkly tie.
Yes, hold on, I'm typing what Rose said.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
I think it might have been Josie said something to the effect of like a good time to use subtext is at like really important emotional moments. I don't know if that was you, somebody said it. Are there any other points in a story that are like, this is a good spot to insert? Because you can't have it everywhere, right? But where in the plot structure, right? Where would be good points to put it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair question. That's kind of a technique question. I would say think about your pinch points, and then put the subtext not at those. So sometimes subtext leads you up to those bigger emotional moments, and so it's embedded. It's kind of like you talked about with, it's almost foreshadowing in the way that you mentioned it in this Sixth Sense. But you have if you have a quiet moment, that's a great place to have some subtext, some tensions that later become very evident. So I'd say look at your pinch points, look at your emotional beats, and then think about ways that you can foreshadow or move towards those in between those beats. Sorry.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. It's a very mechanical question, and that's very difficult to answer because subtext is kind of the opposite of that, right? And it's going to sound funny, but I think you want to include subtext anywhere where you want the reader most invested. Because what subtext is doing is it's involving readers in the storytelling process. Okay, that's why I said any story that you can remember long after you've read it had subtext and had valuable subtext because you were involved in the storytelling process. You were internalizing it, making connections. You were part of the story. I don't know how else to say that. So yes, you can't use it all the time, otherwise it's just a blank book. But anytime you want the reader absolutely at the most invested, so that's why it's really good in relationships, because we want the readers invested in the relationships, right? And in the themes and in all this kind of stuff. So that would be my answer.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I think, like, I don't know that it's necessary here, but I think that one of my favorite places for subtext to be is when there are multiple characters in a scene. Because like you were saying earlier, they all have their separate things that they want or think that they want, and the things that like they're afraid of happening that they might not even be aware of. And they're all going to be not necessarily directly in conflict, but there's going to be some conflict there. And that's how you make a rich rich interactions between characters and make characters, even not your main ones, feel more fleshed out.
Awesome. Thank you. I also feel like there needs to be a payoff too. Like any time you raise a question, make sure you do the answer so that if there is some kind of subtextual question that you're like, what is this? Then make sure you have the payoff. Should we go ahead and open it to questions? I saw a bunch of hands. This guy, and then pink beret thingy, or the bandana thingy. So let's go with this guy.
So I was curious about the idea of saving subtext for quiet moments, that not pinch points. For example, in a military thriller, say a commander gives an impossible order and he's got to carry it out, but his first thought may be, crap, but he knows the answer is, yes, sir. And there's already a dissonance and he just goes. To me, having it in a pinch point would increase the tension. It's like, how long will they keep following those orders? What's going to happen? What will we choose? So I'm wondering if, there may be other.
Absolutely. If it's the lifeblood of fiction, there's not really a place we don't have subtext, right? I think if you're thinking about the mechanics of where to put it, make sure it's in the quiet moments as well. But it naturally comes in those, at least for me, when I'm writing, subtext is not hard to do in the action moments, because you're right. These are moments that your characters are very invested in, and so they naturally come out. So I wouldn't say don't put it in the pinch points, but I would say make sure it's other places as well.
Excellent question. All right, pink bandana.
So what's your advice for using subtext for twist villains or other characters where they're really not who you think they are? What advice do you have on that?
Who wants to tackle?
Yeah, you guys take that, that's really good.
I think,
Summarize the question so we can.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Go for it. Rose.
Like how do you, for twist characters where you're gonna find out they're different than who they seem at first, yes? Then how do you create that subtext? And that kind of goes to the character that my husband hates, so. Part of it is in how people who know that character well maybe interact with them. Maybe you see like certain moments of hesitation when like the character that you think they are wouldn't hesitate. It's very individual, I think. And that's like one of the trickiest things I think, to not make that feel heavy-handed. But I think if you just think like, what are the double meanings here? Always. You know.
I'm gonna go back to the beta reader answer, because first of all, I think you should have fun with it. Have fun with your characters, try different things, see what works, because it really is an individual thing, like different. It's gonna depend on the character and what they're trying to accomplish, how you actually go through the process of doing that. But if you have beta readers reading it, one thing you want to look for is that at least some of them figure it out, so that it's not so unclear that when the twist happens that the readers are like, huh? I didn't see that coming. You want them, the good twist is surprising but inevitable, right? And so when it happens, they're like, oh, of course. Not, huh? Right? You don't want that reaction. You want the, why didn't I see that reaction, right? And so you want at least some of your beta readers to figure it out ahead of time, but most of them to maybe just have a feeling like there's something not quite right with this character, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I love, sorry.
Go ahead.
I love, so in Cozy Mystery, of course, we do this all the time, right? Because you got all these people, any of them could be the murderer, and by the end, it has to make sense who was the murderer, but you can't see it from the beginning. You can't be like, oh, it's obviously him, because he's a jerk, or whatever. And so I love playing with this in terms of things that can be taken two ways about a character, right? So a character could be, they're super helpful, right? But they could also, later, we could find out that there's a self-motivation behind what they were doing, you know? And so their motivations, their dialogue, you can play with, and this is where the fun comes in. I absolutely agree with you. This is where the fun comes in, is you can play with something that could be taken a different way once you know who the character is. So think about ways that you can play with two sides of a character that can be seen one way until you know that they're the bad guy, and you look back and go, that's what they meant by that comment. It's super fun to do that, and that's the way, I think, one of the ways you can help your readers feel like it's inevitable, which I like that term.
And I like it because when you are planting these like twist villains or any kind of plot twist, you're actually trying to plant enough clues that people are reading because they want to know if they're right. Because readers want to feel smart, right? Because anytime I watch a mystery show on Hallmark Channel, I'm like, I know who the guy is as soon as they walked on the screen, because I know how this works, and I'm watching it to the end to see if I'm right. And I know I'm right, but I just want to make sure. Okay.
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say too, I think studying different like psychological personalities can help, and I think like especially the narcissistic personality disorder. Your character doesn't have to be a narcissist, but hiding your motives uses a lot of those same tools, where you're putting on emotions, putting on a certain persona for your own gain.
Another good resource is look up psychopaths, seriously, because they're very good at manipulating people and thinking they're people they're not.
Yeah.
And then it's unfortunately surprising when the truth comes out about them. So, and I just want to add one more thing to the readers are smart.
Yeah.
Comment. They are. Readers are smart. They're probably smarter than you think they are. And that's weird. I know. You're all smart, okay? You are. And as a writer, can be really tempting to think, oh, they're not gonna get this, I'm not gonna figure it out, I should just tell them or give them hints. It's okay, your readers are smart people, that's why they're reading books, okay?
All right, let's open to some more questions. Let's see, Flannel.
So, hey, along those lines, do you have to be honest? If you're writing a cozy mystery and you want your audience to say, oh, I think he did it because he said this, can it be a red herring? And if so, does it have to, on the second reading, make sense that, oh no, he was actually thinking of the woman that he was with the night before? How many levels, how smart do we have to assume the audience is smart enough to lie to them?
So the question was, how do we have to be honest when these, and let me make sure I get this right, do we have to be honest when we give these responses to some of these questions, like in a murder mystery when they're going around and they're asking these questions, do we as a writer have to make sure that those answers are honest? So.
I would say yes. I would say as the author, you have to be honest with them, but your characters don't have to be. And so you have to know your characters well enough that you can on second reading go, oh, I see that now. I see why that's a red herring. In fact, that's what's so fun about mystery. And I would say almost every story is a mystery. You know, right? There's some mystery in every story. So cozy mystery certainly, but every story has that fun puzzle that you want to figure out. And on second reading, yeah, I would say you're exactly right. That you have to be honest with them as a writer. You don't want to cheat them, but you do. But your characters don't have to be honest.
I think that's what makes you feel that you've read a well-crafted story, is if all of the parts fit. And yeah, so it's not even just about lying. Even if you did it on purpose, your reader is going to be like, they don't know how to write a story. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay, now I'm gonna sound like I'm being contrarian, but the spoiler is that I'm not. So you can have an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
That is a tool that you can use. So the narrator can be dishonest, but the book as a whole cannot be. It does have to make sense on a second read through. If the first time you come across and it is red herring, red herrings are great, use them, they're a wonderful tool. And yes, your readers are smart enough that some of them will follow the red herring and others will be like, it's a red herring, you're not tricking me, right? So it's okay. But the book does have to be honest in its completion, in its whole, in its entirety. Has anyone ever played the game Stanley Parable? Okay? If you have a computer and have never played this game and you want to be a writer, go home, download Steam, buy the Stanley Parable and play it. It's a very simple game, but it is a fantastic game about an unreliable narrator. I'm spoiling it a little bit there, but it becomes very apparent very quickly. So.
Awesome, we have 5 more minutes in the back.
What are a couple or your favorite literary examples that have good subtext?
So our favorite examples of literary context or subtext.
I have like such a long list. There's a local author, Beth Brower. She's really good at that, if anybody knows her. Jane Austen. I wrote some down because I just had like a really long list. If anybody knows Evie Zoboy, she writes really good subtext. Kazuo Ishiguro. And I was thinking about like TV and stuff like that too. White Lotus is really good. I thought American Fiction had good subtext.
I'll just give two quick examples. If we're including series, Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Watch that a million times. and then for a little classic literature, To Kill a Mockingbird, I think has amazing subtext that you can learn a lot from.
I want to double down on Avatar because most of you have probably seen it. If you haven't, and you want to be a writer, this is some of the best writing you will ever see on TV. And I know that it's a cartoon, and you might think it seems childish. Just watch it. Okay, it's some of the best writing ever. Character writing, story plot, all of it is fantastic. Another personal favorite is Meet Joe Black. That is a fantastic movie. I'm not going to tell you anything about it because you don't want to know anything about it going into that. Just go watch it and enjoy it. Has a lot of very powerful subtext.
And I'm just gonna recommend one of my favorite YouTubers. So A Closer Look, it's Henry, I don't know what his last name is, but he has one on dialogue and he talks a lot about subtext in there and how to use subtext in dialogue. So that's one of my favorite. And yes, in the gray, over here.
So, I have a few questions. So first, like, I feel like, a few phrases, what's the definition of subtext? Because it seems like that you're switching like what the story is really about, but then also like more contradiction of what the characters are doing. And why does it actually, like I feel like you can write a solid book with characters that care about things that matter without having something happening that the characters don't know about. Like Shakespeare had no subtext, and that's a timeless classic. And yeah, so like, you know, I hope that was it.
All right, so the question is, what is subtext? Like a definition, like a one-line word per subtext. Somebody want to tackle that one? Yeah, okay. Go, Rose.
Okay, I would just say it's what is being said without actually explicitly being said.
Yeah, it's the inexplicitness of a scene.
It's often called reading between the lines for a reason because it's everything that the audience knows or figures out that is not stated explicitly in the text. So, yeah.
It's the story beneath the story.
It's the based on the context clues that we are given from the text.
And I would just say that Shakespeare is really good at subtext. And so as you read him, as you look or watch Shakespeare plays, think about what's going on underneath. I mean, you have a great story, and you also have a story going on underneath the story. And so there's some actually great examples of that. I think The Tempest is excellent for subtext.
Yeah, I think the reason why Shakespeare is beloved after hundreds of years is because that is probably as close as you can get to 100% subtext. Because it's just like everything has multiple meanings.
Okay, we are out of time.